Okay, so this is the training for the loan modification. All right, let me tell you the principles of the loan modification first of all, and I'm going to tell you why this is so difficult right now to get a loan modification approved. Um, Back in the heyday, okay, this is in 2008, 2009, when the market crashed, the market collapsed, and everything. Before that day, loan modifications were non-existent. The banks wouldn't do a loan modification. I mean, before the crisis, if you're behind on the payment, they'll just foreclose on you, basically, right? But the problem is that there's so many people that were in default. We're talking about almost 5.5 million people in default in 2008, which was like a huge amount of people, right? The banks got this concession from the government. They got $360 trillion dollars, I think it was the number, and this was to subsidize consumer programs to help the people, keep the properties, and that's where the loan modifications started. That's also where the HARP refinance started, the Home Affordable Refinance Program started. So so first of all, I want you to know that the loan modifications were subsidized by the government, but the subsidy ended in 2012, in December 31st, 2012. That's when the government subsidy basically ended. There's no more money. So banks really lost the incentive of doing loan modifications because now they're not getting subsidies from the government in order to pay for them. So well, that's one of the reasons why getting a loan modification through right now is difficult. Now, is it impossible to get a loan modification right now? It's not. You can still get a loan modification, but you have to have certain parameters, and I'm gonna explain it to you like I explain it to people, so you understand, how to explain it to them, basically. Um, the first and foremost thing that you have to think in regards to loan modification is if you're behind, if you are already behind on the payment. All right. Uh, what the bank is going to try to do is going to try to figure out a way that you can not stay behind on the payment. Basically, that you don't you can continue making your payments on the property and be able to to afford the payments on the house, etc., etc. Now, a lot of people talked about principal reductions. A lot of people talked about oh, they're gonna forgive me the money that I'm already behind. To be quite honest with you, I don't think minus some exceptions in which the bank did a straight principal reduction for several reasons. I don't honestly know the reason why they didn't, because in some cases they didn't, in some cases they didn't do it, and there was no rhyme and reason why they would do a principal reduction for Juan and they would not do a principal reduction for John. I don't know why. I honestly don't know, right? But for some people, they would do principal reductions. For some people, they wouldn't. I think it has to do something in regards to in the back end when they purchase the loan or something like that, or or the lender that purchased the loan first or they sold the loan first, it's no longer available, file for bankruptcy or something. Then they don't have to pay back that money because that lender doesn't exist anymore, things like that. So it has to do something like that. But for the most part, there is no principal reduction. For the most part, the bank will not forgive you on the payments they already behind on the payment. So what they try to do is if you're, let's say, $40,000 behind on the payment, what they're gonna do is they're gonna take that $40,000 and they're just gonna tack it on top of the principal. Now, principal reduction should not be compared to principal deferment. There's two separate things. A lot of people thought they got a principal reduction when in fact they did a principal deferment. As a matter of fact, if you look at a complete loan modification package, it will say somewhere on page number 7 through 14, because loan modification packages are usually about 14 to 18 pages or something like that. You will see in the middle of the pages in there that says there is no principal reduction, there's a principal deferment, which basically means the following. Let's say, for example, you owe the bank $600,000, for example. And then in order for you, and I'm going to talk to you about lowering the payment in a second, but in order for the bank to approve the loan modification, your payment has to be lower. So what they say, well, we cannot lower the payment unless we do a principal deferment. So what we're going to do is we're going to take $400,000. We're going to take $200,000 out of the $600,000, and we're going to tack it in the back end. We're going to put it in the back end of the loan, you don't have to make payments on it. It's still accruing interest on the $200,000. So you still owe the principal plus interest on that money, but you're not making the payment on it every single month. That's what a principal deferment is all about. So a lot of people, they say, oh, and people used to come to me like this all the time. Oh, no, the bank did a principal reduction of $200,000, and I'm looking at their loan modification, and it says principal deferment $200,000 for 27 years is due and payable on the 27th year, April 5th, 2050 or whatever that is, right? Which basically means that when you hit that date, April 1st, 2050 or whatever, that whole amount of money, it becomes due and payable. That means that you have to pay that the 200,000 plus all the interest accumulated on that. Okay, so that's the difference between a principal reduction, which is straight out, they just reduce the principal, and a principal deferment. Okay, so let's go back to the principal thing. The goal of the bank is to make you able to make a payment on the property. There's only a few ways they can do that, and I already mentioned one of them, which is the principal deferment. Think about it on these terms. If you owe $600,000 to the bank, your payment is based on $600,000. But if the bank takes away $200,000, puts it in the back end, you don't have to make payments on it. Now your payment is only going to be based on $400,000. Then by definition, your payment should be lower. Would you agree with me? So when you reduce your principal, then you reduce the payment. That's one way of the bank helping you to make you able to make that payment. Second way of making somebody able to make the payment is to reduce the interest rate. Okay, so let's say, for example, you owe $600,000 at 6% interest. Your payment is this much, but then we're going to take that principal deferment, and your new payment is going to be based on $400,000, and we're going to reduce your interest payment to 2%. Well, going from $600,000 at 6% to $400,000 at 2%, obviously your payment is going to drop. Would you agree with me on that? So that's the second way. The third way of the bank doing this is by extending the amount of years on your mortgage. All right. So it was very common back in the day when you had a property, and let's say that you had already been paying the property for 5 years, and you had 25 years left over on the mortgage. It was very common that the bank will reset you back at 30 years, because by extending the amount of years, you're extending the amortization period, you're reducing the payment on the loan. So you had some loans that were 30 years, some of them were 32, 35, 40, etc., right? All right, so those are the ways that a principal a loan modification works in helping you lower the payment for the house. Here's the problem that we have right now. Here's the problem that we have right now. The first one I already mentioned to you, which is the government is no longer giving incentives to the bank to do loan modifications. So the first problem you have is that the bank really doesn't want to do a loan modification. All right, that's the first thing. Now they have to, by law, they have to. If somebody asks, the law basically states that if you ask for a loan modification, it has to be reviewed. They don't say it has to be approved. It says it has to be reviewed, and if you don't approve, then they have to tell you the reasons why you did not approve for the loan modification, which is another key thing for you, because if you're talking to consumers that they say, well, I already applied for loan modification 3 times and I got declined, then you say, well, why? Why did you get declined? Well, I don't know. Well, you should know, because it's on the paperwork. The paperwork actually tells you the reasons why you got declined, right? And I'm going to talk to you about those reasons in a second. But anyways, so here's the thing. So you can, the bank, like I said, they don't have any incentive to give you a loan modification, number one. So that's the first problem you have to tackle. The second problem is that they are no longer doing principal reductions, and in most cases, they're not doing principal deferment. So that means that your consumer will have to approve for the full face value of whatever they owe. All right. So if they owe, for example, 400,000, they have to approve for 400,000. If they owe $400,000 and they're behind on the payment $28,000, they're gonna have to approve for $428,000. That's the next part, right? So here's the next part to that. So they have to approve for the full value. And number three, chances are that you're not going to be able to do any more than 30-year mortgages. So if somebody's been paying the house, for example, for 5 years, they can go from 25 to 30. The bank will probably reset them to 30 years. If they've been paying the house for 10 years, 15 years, yes, they can go from 15 to 20 to 30, whatever. And that way extend a little bit more the amortization period so the payment goes down. But if you have somebody that just purchased the house 2 or 3 years ago, and they've been paying the house for 2 or 3 years, and going from 27 years amortization to a 30-year amortization really doesn't help anybody reduce the payment. Does that make sense? Because remember that the first 12 or 15 years of your mortgage, especially the 30-year mortgage, the first 10 or 15 years is like 90% interest and only like 10% principal, right? It doesn't turn around until you're after that curve, the 15-year curve. So anyways, so that's the second challenge. And the third challenge in regards to doing the loan modifications is on the interest rate. Let me tell you. Because when the government was subsidizing the banks to do a loan modification, they have a conforming interest rate of 2%. So the starting rate is 2%. So all loan modifications that were done, not all of them, but most of them that were done during those years, 2008, 9, 10, 11, etc., were done at 2% interest because that was the benchmark from the government until the subsidy ended. Once the subsidy ended, then you reverted back to the market interest rate. Now, at the time when the subsidy ended, which is in 2012, December 31st, 2012, the interest rate was still around 2.25, 2.5, even 3%, something like that. So you still have really good interest rates at the time. The problem is that right now the interest rate is what, 4.5, 5%, 5.25, depending on the loan program, right? So here's the challenge that you have. The challenge for the consumer is, number one, there is no principal reduction. You're going to have to approve for the whole amount. And whatever you are behind on the payment, you probably need to tack that on to the principal. So the principal is going to increase. Number two, your amortization period can only increase to 30 years. So wherever you are right now, you're at 25 years, 26 years, 27 years, whatever, it's only going to increase to 30 years, which is not going to be a longer period to reduce the debt. So the debt is only going to reduce in a minor way because of that. And number three, the interest rate you're going to get is probably going to be higher than the interest rate you currently have. And that's a challenge for loan modification. I'm not here to tell you that the loan modification is going to get declined because I don't know that. As a matter of fact, I encourage everybody to submit it.
Loan modifications trying to help people out with them. That's not a good idea.
Well, no, yeah. And what I'm trying to tell you right now is that I'm not here to tell you the loan modification will get denied, or it won't help the consumer. All I'm saying that you have certain challenges that you're gonna have through this process to try to get the loan modification approved. All right. So if I look at, because every case is different. You understand what I'm saying? I can be sitting down across the table with somebody that I don't know. Let's say they have good income, but they got into an accident and they've been out of work for 3 months, but they're going back to work next month, right? Something like that, right? And these people can actually afford the payment. They just cannot afford the fact that they're already $10,000 behind on the payment. That's the problem right now. So for somebody like that, that will probably help. Now, if you meet with somebody that is unemployed and has zero income, well, the loan modification is not going to help them because they got zero income. So how is that going to help them, right? So I can't tell you, I can't give you a blanket answer whether the loan modification is going to work for everybody or not going to work for everybody because it's on a case by case basis. So I have to review the case. I have to ask questions. When I sit down with the people, I ask them questions. First question I ask people most of the time is, why did you get behind? Just ask them the question straight out. Why did you get behind? Tell me the reasons why, and then they'll tell you the reasons why. They're going to say, oh, because I got laid off, or I got into an accident, or I just can't afford the house payment anymore, or the loan modification that I had expired and now my payment is higher. I don't know. They're going to give you something, right? And I don't know what the answer is going to be. I have no idea. All I can do is ask the question, get the answer, figure out if this is going to work for them or not. So here's a scenario, okay, for somebody that I met recently, okay. Um, they bought the house 2 years ago. He lost his job. he's been looking for a job for like 6 months or something like that, and he can't find a job. Their interest rate is 3.25%, which is pretty good, and that's about it. So here's the thing. The first question I ask is, why do you get behind? He said, well, because I lost my job. I said, okay, have you found a job yet? I haven't found a job. Okay, second question is, how much behind are you on the payment? He's like, well, I'm like a year behind on the payment, $30,000 or whatever, right? $30,000 is a lot of money. I mean, you can't come back from $30,000. I can tell you that. I mean, you can come back from a month or 2 months behind. Maybe you can come back from that. But coming back from 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, and I've seen people 3 years behind on the payment, by the way. The bank hasn't foreclosed them. I don't know why, but I've seen people 3 years behind on the payment. Dude, if you're $100,000 behind on the payment, there's none coming back from there. You know what I mean? So, anyways, but so for some cases like this, for example, loan modification is not gonna work. Now, if you have somebody that is just behind on the payment 1 month, and they got behind because, I don't know, they were laid off, but now they're back to work or something, but they're just struggling to make that payment every single month, and they have an interest rate, let's say around 5%, and they've been living in the house for like 10 years. Maybe loan modification will help them, because if you can reset them back to 30 years instead of 20. If you can lower the interest rate from 6% to 4.5% or whatever that's going to be, right? Maybe that's going to help them, right? So we're going to run the numbers. We're going to see what the numbers. So this is where the calculator comes into place. All right. Now these numbers are for illustration purposes only. They're not going to be perfect, and they're not going to be perfect for every case scenario, but we're going to use them for illustration purposes. So if you, for example, there's 5 questions you need to know, and most of the questions can be answered by getting a mortgage coupon. Somebody gives you a mortgage coupon, you probably know how to answer those questions. The first question is this, very simple. How much do you own your principal balance on the first or second trustee, depending if they have a first and a second, or they only have a first? How much is your current balance? What is your interest rate? How many years have you been making the payment on that loan? Okay, and how many months are you behind on your payment? So if you know the answers to those questions, and there's one more, I can't remember which one. Okay, anyways, I know there's one more, but I can't remember which one. So if somebody, and let's make believe here, let's say somebody currently owes, I don't know, $488,000 on the first trust deed, and the interest rate is 3.5%, and they've been paying the house for 5 years, so that's 25 years left over on the mortgage. And let's say they don't have a second trustee, they don't have a second interest rate, and they don't have a second. Okay, and they're months behind on the payment. Let's say that they are 4 months behind on the payment. This and oh, the market value of the property. I forgot about the market value. We're gonna talk about LTV. Let me actually mention net present value right now, because I think this is gonna be important. If your value of the property is too high in comparison to your loan, that means that you have a lot of equity on the property. Your loan may be declined because you have a lot of equity. Basically, the way the banks look at this is the following. If you have $200,000 of equity on the house and you cannot afford it, just sell the house. You know what I'm saying? Take your money and run, because we can't help you. So net present value is also important. So anyways, let's talk about market value for right now. So let's say the house, they bought it 5 years ago, and the house appreciated in value, and they bought it for $500,000. They currently owe 488, based on the amortization table, and the house is worth, let's say, $550,000. So let's say 550. So in this case, they're positive. This is a good example. This is a good prospect for loan modification. All right. So this is a good example. So their current payment right now is 2123. They have property taxes, they have insurance that they have to pay. So the total payment, if it's fully amortized means, a full amortization, principal and interest, property taxes, insurance, etc. And I didn't count their mortgage insurance, but you can put it on their HOA if they have mortgage insurance. So their total payment in this moment should be $2,682. You can see that here, $2,682, right? And let's say they cannot afford that payment, right? So what the bank would do is they would take the amount of money that they owe, which is the 488. They will tack in whatever they're behind on the payment, which in this case is somewhere around $9,000, and they'll start with a new loan at 496. and they're going to start with a new interest rate. And let's say the interest rate right now for this is 4.5%. All right. And in the past, and I don't know if this works exactly the same nowadays, but in the past they used to give you like a teaser period. Your interest rate was at 2% for 5 years, and then it starts increasing, right? So we're gonna keep that right there for now. And let's say that the interest rate after 5 years is gonna be the same, 4.5%. So now your payment is gonna go to 27.93, which is from 26.82 to 27.93. Is that going to save you money? The answer is no. It's not going to save you money. And why is it not going to save you money? Well, the reason why is because number one, we're taking money that you're behind on the payment. You're behind on the payment, $9,000. We're putting it into the principal, right? And your interest rate that you have currently right now is 3.25%, and we're gonna go from 3.25% to 4.5%. That's not gonna save you money. Now, would it make you current? Yes, it would make you current. If your whole goal is to get current on the payment, maybe this loan modification will help you. But if your whole goal is to reduce the payment that you're making, this is probably not going to help you. You know what I'm saying? And so that's and I can't be, I like I said, it's on a case by case basis. That's why you need to sit down with the consumer. You need to look at their mortgage coupon. You need to ask the question, why did you get behind on the payment? Why is it that you cannot afford the payment, etc., to figure out whether or not the loan modification is going to make sense? Because for a lot of people, it doesn't make sense. All right, especially the fact that the interest rate right now is higher than it was when they did the mortgage the first time, or they did the loan modification the previous time, right? And that's the thing. So, anyways, having said that, you gotta run the numbers, and you can run a million scenarios on this, but they usually work out something like this. And here's the next part, which is the most important part. Let's say somebody says, well, you know what? I understand my payment is gonna go up, $100 or whatever that is. But what I really want to do is I really want to get caught up. I'm 10 months behind on the payment. Let's say they're 10 months behind on the payment. I'm 10 months behind on the payment, and I know my payment is going to go up, but I really want to get caught up, right? Okay, that's fine. Now, the next part is the amount of income that is necessary in order to qualify for a loan modification. You have to make sufficient income, all right? You have to make sufficient income. So if you go to the next part, which is the pre-qual calculator right here, it's going to tell you exactly how much income you need to make. So in order to qualify for $510,000 with 4.5% interest rate and amortize over a 30-year period, etc., your income, the minimum income required is 9,204. Give me 1 second, please.